Welcome everybody to our pre-commission work sessions. We're glad to have everybody here, another full house. And we're going to start off our session with an announcement here from Director Long.
Commissioners, good morning. I have some very great news. I have an individual that I'd like to introduce you to. She is our new Deputy Director of Maintenance, Jennifer Behringer. I believe she's right over here. There she is. She is a former Air Force officer. She's held multiple command leadership billets, to include the Deputy Group Commander position at Ellsworth Air Force Base, Sport Group Commander, I'm sorry, and Deputy Sport Group Commander at Osan, Korea. Talk about being on the front line and such. We are very blessed to have her join our team as the Deputy Director of Maintenance. And her interests are, I think you'll enjoy speaking to her. She loves international travel, and she loves restoring old cars and such. So anyway, yesterday was her first day, and it was a wonderfully interesting first day for our Deputy Director of Maintenance and such. But
and she's back today.
We were praying she'd come back.
There
you go. But anyway, we're just very, very proud to have her on the team, and I wanted to introduce you to her.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Happy
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we're called to order, and we will start with Stephen Hunt with DRT, and he's going to present the State Street Transit-Oriented Development Project update.
Yes.
So we will turn it over to you, and welcome to you.
If I could, before you start, Commissioners, we've asked Stephen to be here to share some ideas and such. It's always great to share ideas. I saw this earlier, and there's some very interesting concepts that I wanted to have him bring forward and put on the table for all of you. So, Stephen, thank you for taking the time again, and over to you, please.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, and really just want to take the opportunity to share with you all some work that has been going on over the last about 18 months or two years. So as a region, the local jurisdictions that are up and down the State Street corridor have been working on with the State Street Transit-Oriented Development Project. So the presentation today is going to go over the purpose, the scope, or the purpose and need initially of the project, as well as some of the major findings, and then I wanted to end by talking about an additional project that's going on in the corridor, make sure that you're aware of that as well. So the State Street Transit-Oriented Development Project was one of the important steps identified in the State Street Traffic and Transit and Traffic Operations Plan that asked local jurisdictions to identify what things needed to change in their land use policies to encourage the type of development on the corridor that would support the vision for the State Street corridor, which was an area that supported transit with higher intensity development. And so this study looked at what those local jurisdictions could do to improve or change their land use codes to encourage that type of development. It also looked at how transit and that development interface. So the State Street corridor, or the State Street TOD study, is an aspirational study more than a plan. It looked at where we were going with the State Street Transit and Traffic Operations Plan, and there were three main components of it: a market analysis, what would be necessary to realize the development that was needed for the area, how transit could help support that, and what kind of amenities would make a difference there. And then it also developed a number of visualizations that show how all these things come together. So there's a little video that I wanted to show, as well as highlight some of the renderings that were made at the 4 station areas that were identified in the study. I guess I didn't provide a scope or a map of the extent of this study, but just for your all reference, the study went from Highway 55 and State Street down to Whitewater and State Street. So there were 4 different station areas that were identified in that area, and it looked at what types of activities the local jurisdictions could make in those areas, again, to be nodes of development. So the first thing, and here are those 4 tier 1 station areas that were identified. First thing that it did was a market analysis to determine how much of the development that is slated for the region might be able to be captured in these nodes, and what could, and then from there they built out the types of development that the cities were interested in having. There was a community advisory committee that came together as well to identify what types of things you would want to be highlighted. So access to the canals, access to the river. How do we create public space that makes these livable nodes and places where people would like to be, as well as support the development that was coming in terms of residential and employment. So they did a market analysis to determine what could the market bear in terms of development at these locations, and then that went into the type of development that was identified for the 4 station areas. In addition to that, one of the things that was identified through that market analysis was the need for high quality public amenities, and so that included bike and pedestrian paths, open spaces, as well as the transit amenities that would be there to support transit services traveling up and down the corridor. What kinds of passenger facilities would encourage more use? What kind of passenger facilities would help people feel safer and signal to the development community that this is a location where they could rely on transit to be an important part of the transportation options up and down the corridor. So the study identified a number of elements that would go into that, into those station areas on the transit side, and we'll go into you'll see a little bit more about how that works with the development in the video. But the types of things that were identified here were level boarding, off-board fare payment, things that would help speed up the transit operations and make it easier for people to choose to take transit. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is that the study pulled these 3 things together to do some renderings at the 4 station areas, as well as a video to help communicate to the public what it is that we're really trying to accomplish with the State Street corridor. And so I'm not rambling. I'm going through a presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. But I was going to jump to the video, unless there are any other questions. I won't ramble. This is about a 2.5-minute video.
The Boise metropolitan area is one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. State Street is a central transportation connection linking the cities of Boise, Meridian, Eagle, and Garden City. Each day, thousands of people rely on this route to get to work, school, shops, and the outdoors. Regional growth is expected to change the character of this corridor, with more housing, jobs, and traffic. Moving people on State Street efficiently, now and in the future, requires frequent transit service. The amount of cars and people on State Street will greatly increase in the near future. One bus carries many more people than one car, and traffic projections show that even though only 10% of vehicles in the future high-occupancy vehicle lane will be buses, they will carry almost half of the people using that lane. That's efficiency in action. The face of the region is also changing. Younger residents and retirees want transportation choices, including better transit, walkable streets, and alternatives to driving. Increasing transportation options benefit everyone. Regional growth is expected to change the character of this corridor, with more housing, jobs, and traffic. Are there ways to balance the desire for mobility with safe, walkable areas that provide housing, employment, and services? How do new technologies affect our mobility? Is State Street ready for the future? Cities along State Street have been addressing these questions, most recently through the State Street Transit and Traffic Operational Plan. The plan provides a vision and strategies to redesign State Street with an emphasis on transit, a greater mixture of uses, and development that supports high-capacity transit. Part of the plan focuses on mixed-use development with local services nearby. Housing should be accessible and affordable. Anyone can walk, roll, or ride safely to the park, to school, to work, or shopping without getting in a car. Many older neighborhoods in the Boise area were developed this way. State Street's future will also include bus rapid transit, or BRT, a convenient, efficient, and reliable connection between downtown Boise and communities to the west. Future bus rapid transit would provide 15-minute headways and link to other transit routes. BRT is already planning on service changes to increase bus frequencies. Communities similar to Boise, with bus rapid transit systems, have already experienced these benefits. In Fort Collins, Colorado, daily ridership increased by 75% in the first 6 months of the city's 5-mile BRT line, which resulted in $150 million in revenue and 1,000 new jobs. Opened in 2007, Eugene, Oregon's MX is a 28-mile bus rapid transit line. Daily ridership along the corridor doubled in the first 17 months, which translated into $100 million in investment and 10% job growth. So, what would transit look like in the future? Compass, a regional transportation planning organization, and area partners have been working with the community to develop station concepts to shape the vision of future bus rapid transit corridor. Better transit, safer connected streets, and strong neighborhoods are all part of State Street's transit-oriented future. Find out more and stay connected for news and updates on this important project at our website.
So, as we went through this planning effort, we realized that there was a need for all of us to have a way to communicate about the different things that are going on the State Street corridor. And so a spin-off of that project was the development of the Build a Better State Street website, which is envisioned to be a location where all of the agencies in the corridor can participate in sharing what's going on in their respective areas along the corridor, and so it's in part to help communicate to the public why are we continuing to have construction on the corridor over the next 10 years? Why don't you guys know that adding more housing and development in the corridor just adds to congestion? Why isn't there a plan to piece all these things together? And what we're trying to do with service or resources like this website is have a place where we can tell that message that cuts across the different agencies that are involved. And so, working with staff, we set up this website to be a place to do that, and we want to have that continue to be a location where information can be shared with the public, continue to have the autonomy of each of the different agencies involved. It's not identified when we go to the website there. It's not identified as any particular agency. There's all the agencies that are involved are mentioned, but the real purpose of the website, as I mentioned, is to share the messages of what we're trying to accomplish, how the efforts that we're doing in the area improve the corridor, and give a place for people who want to know more information about maybe the development activities that are going along on the corridor, or if there are road projects in the corridor, what are the different activities that are going on there in terms of construction or planning, including bicycle and ped projects. So this is an opportunity for us to work together to make sure that everyone's understanding how are these activities working, which would build on the ACHD 5-year work plan, integrated 5-year work plan. Those are the types of things that we've been working with staff on, trying to integrate into one place, because we can also then layer in there the transit projects. This mentions the improvements that we made last year. We want to add to this the enhancements that are coming to Eagle this coming March. So it's a location where we can have information about all the different parties that are working in the corridor to make it the location that we as a region have been envisioning all along. So I should pause. Any questions so far on either the video or what we're trying to do with the website and the work that's been done today?
Commissioners, does anyone have questions? Go ahead, Mo. You got a few minutes, Steve.
Okay. last thing that I wanted to mention is an additional project that just got underway, which is the State Street Alternatives Analysis, which is really looking at about a year ago it came and presented on some of the next steps, and this was one of them, of looking at how do we get transit service on State Street to the end of the line, which would be at Main Street Station in downtown Boise now. And there are a number of different paths that could be used, whether that's staying on State Street all the way down to, whether it's at 9th or 5th, maybe where we turn around and come up, or using Whitewater Boulevard, 27th and 23rd, and Main and Fairview on the east-west portion of that. So it's an analysis of which of those paths provides the most opportunity for us to finish the connection, the transit connection on State Street. Whitewater Boulevard is going to be what we call about the peak load point for services coming down State Street. In other words, that's where the buses would be the fullest. So we want to make sure that the types of stops and investments we make in this section help people get to their destination as quickly as possible. So that's the reason for the study. It would be to evaluate those different paths, what it means if we take one over the other in terms of access, as well as opportunities for speed and reliability. While we want this to be consistent with long-term vision of the corridor, the other thing that we're trying to accomplish with this alternative analysis would be identifying near-term actions that we could do to improve transit in the short term. So not all of this is focused on developing, it's not a one step towards all of a sudden having a world-class BRT in the corridor. We would be making investments along the way to help transit move quicker and provide improvements to the existing riders, because we have people that use it today, and what we can do to improve service to those riders will be important for us to hitting the targets that are in the T-top to identify additional investments. So the timeline for this study is we just kicked it off this past month in January. We've begun working on gathering the technical data with Compass, City of Boise, ACHD staff, as well as VRT on what the existing conditions are along those different segments. Through the spring and summer, we'll be identifying those different alternatives. It's not that there's only a certain number, a constrained number of alternatives really that we have to choose from, but we'll be looking at each of those and identifying what our selection or evaluation criteria will be. And we'll evaluate those over the summer and make a recommendation in the fall, both of an alignment as well as the types of improvements that would really help transit avoid any delays between Whitewater and downtown. And that's the update. I really appreciate the time.
Very good. We appreciate you coming in and doing the overview. Commissioner Goldfarb.
You know, we're already building out there, right?
Yes.
So what do you expect the conflicts might be with the way we are building, with what your goals are?
Well, so we've been engaged with the development process of each of the intersections that have gone in to date, and we appreciate the opportunities that have been provided by ACHD.
No conflicts there then?
We're working through those conflicts of how transit would move through those intersections with staff. Yes.
Okay, do you think it's a little late in the game, or are we right on the money?
So, nope, we don't have any interest in holding up projects that are in progress and that are well under design. So BMP is done, Collister's done. The current project at Pierce Park that is being designed, well, that's under construction, and not under construction, under design, as I understand, and maybe doing some redesign to consider a south leg at Pierce Park. We've been involved with that. There's been some discussion about where the bus is, what's needed for those bus stops. I think there's still room to...
There's enough physical room for what you guys are hoping for?
Yes, there certainly is that. Yep.
That's it.
And what's exciting about what's happened over the last couple of years is that there's more room at those intersections that we would like to look at how we can improve transit performance through the corridor, similar to what you all have experienced in terms of the reduction in traffic delay because of the investments in those intersections. There could be some opportunities improve the flow of transit through there as well. And so we anticipate continuing those conversations with ACHD and our partners to help build that corridor. But yeah, there have been some tension points, but we're working. That's the purpose that we have the executive directors, the State Street executive team, where we're trying to get the opportunity to bring any of those concerns to this commission as necessary.
Very good. Any other questions?
Actually, I have quite a few if time allows.
Commissioner Arnold?
Thank you. Well, following up on Commissioner Goldthorpe, you know, the T-top, State Street T-top was adopted by all the agencies that were involved, including BRT. Are you proposing some amendments to that plan? And if so, when are we going to see those?
So the State Street TOD study doesn't propose any amendments to that plan. But through that process, we did identify some areas that we would like to revisit, including the future of HOV lanes in the corridor, as well as bus pullouts at all the stops along the corridor, because as we did this study, we identified conflicts between development pressures and as well as not on-time performance, but that's reliability and speed issues for transit. We can serve people faster without pullouts, and with pullouts, it gives more opportunity for development in the corridor without the pullouts. And what we tested was what kind of impact that would have on general purpose traffic. And those are the types of things we would like to bring back to the commission to say, we feel it's appropriate to consider if anything could or should be updated. And that's what we've been trying to feed through the executive team, and to bring to this commission a proposal. We don't have anything proposed at the moment. What we're trying to do is work with staff to prepare something that we could present to this commission.
That kind of leads into my next question. It seems like a lot of this is kind of hinging on getting HOV lanes. Do you have something proposed for the legislature at this point? Do you have sponsors for the bill? Because as you know, those are not allowed. How are you going to accomplish getting the approval to have HOV lanes?
Well, and to be honest, that's one of the reasons that we would like to revisit some of the assumptions that are in the T-top, is because if we can't do that, what's our fallback? And we would like to have a discussion about what that looks like. And we feel that we can have those conversations. The other thing that I want to say is there's a lot of things that can be done to help transit move through a corridor that aren't a dedicated lane. And so what we're trying to do is kind of open up that toolbox and identify what things could we do at certain locations to make transit work better. Because we feel that at the time of in 2011 when the T-top was adopted, we didn't have a lot of detail at intersections about what could be done to make transit work. The premier improvement for transit was the HOV lane. And I guess what we're trying to say is there are other things that can be done. We don't necessarily need an HOV lane end to end right now to improve transit services. So we'd like to be able to prepare some studies and present some proposals about what we could do to improve transit both now and into the future that may not look exactly as what's in the T-top. That's true. So we got to figure out what does that mean in terms of amending or not.
So how can we help with that process and implementing some of those tools?
I think to be honest, what would be helpful is if the commission was clear on saying that this is something that you're interested in your staff working on looking at. Like let's look at what could be done both in the near term and in the future, and that it's okay to at a minimum, it's okay to explore these options that are not exactly as we think they're consistent with the purpose and thrust of the T-top, but they're not exactly the words that are on the page. And so they're also a decade old, and we're trying to update that with what we know, and provide some more detail about what would be appropriate at the specific intersections. Sometimes we run into some resistance in terms of looking at things that aren't exactly as they are in the T-top. Some examples, if we want to dive in there, and would be the T-top, for example, doesn't have that specific right-of-way or cross-section identified. It would have the HOV lane, and then a bike lane, and then sidewalks are up off the curb. And so we would be interested in exploring other arrangements of that right-of-way that would change the conflict points between bicycles, pedestrians, and transit. And it would be, I think, helpful if the commission was able to provide some clear direction that that's within the scope and theme, I guess, thrust of what the original T-top was, for staff to continue to explore those types of options.
Going to the concept for these stations, I think you had one at Whitewater Park and one at Collister.
Yes.
Can you put one of those up? Or is that one?
That one is actually Collister. And let me think about it. I have a hard copy of it in front of me if I could.
Oh, that's okay. Have you talked to the landowners out there? And this is all private property on those corners.
Right.
Are they on board with changes to the development, and how are you going to accomplish that?
So part of the study was a series of interviews that were made with the landowners to both make the, because last thing we wanted to do was have a study come out and have a landowner say, oh my gosh, you just like re-envisioned my whole property and you haven't engaged me at all in the discussion. And so we did do that due diligence of reaching out to the landowners to get a sense from them as to what's important to them, what do they see themselves doing in the future, and that was written up in the report. So how we get here, and this leans more on the land use agencies than on us, but is by identifying updating comprehensive plans, and I think there was a discussion of some kind of transit overlay zone that would encourage this type of development to occur in these locations. But there isn't a specific plan for it. I mean, just not to be flippant, but there isn't a specific plan to have a 2-story and a 3-story building with an orange front, for example. These things are illustrative of what could be there and what we're trying to accomplish. But that does lead to things about, you know, the amount of glass that's on the floor, the amount of activity that you're trying to, pedestrian activity you're trying to have happen at the street level. Those are the things that each of the jurisdictions are looking at putting into their planning documents, which are consistent with what's identified here in the TOD study, which was consistent with the vision of development along the corridor of the T-top.
So, I mean, if the landowners don't want to go there, then are we going to put in a lot of infrastructure that isn't really going to work because the development's not going to be compatible with what you're trying to do?
So this was part of the discussion about that one of the things that the TOD study found was that this type of development needs some kind of catalyst or some kind of show of public investment that can make it work. So there's nothing in this proposal. I mean, I think there is an additional pedestrian crosswalk that is different than what was there in terms of kind of how the street works, but the right-of-way is the same. So when we talk about like massive amounts of infrastructure, there's not. All we would be talking about doing is maybe shifting the way the bikes and the bikes and transit interface, the way the transit and the general purpose traffic interface in such a way that we're minimizing the impact that transit has on the adjacent land use, as well as the traffic in the corridor. But yes, this is all development isn't it? Is a relationship between the plans that are in place and private entities that are doing the developing. There have been a number of developers, one in the audience today, that has been interested in this study and wanting to see this kind of development happen. And so we're trying to both show it's about signaling to people, like, this is what we want to have here, how do we work to get there? And we're working within the right-of-way that was envisioned for the corridor. are there ways that we can make that more attractive?
Thank you. I do wanna get just one more question, because we have
Okay, just one more comment.
another work session, I wanna get a couple other comments in.
I think we are all on board with trying to make transit work better, and I think that's a common goal that we have. There are just a lot of questions on how do we get there, and who's gonna pay for it and how. So,
Yep.
Those are things that.
And I think that's to come, correct?
That is absolutely to come.
Right.
One of the things so when asking what could be helpful is, as VRT continues to lead with additional studies to answer that question of how and where would we be making some potential investments or suggesting some changes to the right of way as it's laid out, like that we can continue to work with staff to do that's an appropriate use of their time and effort, and you all are the highway agency, and so it's important to have you involved in that, and we just need some direction, I think, from the commission that's appropriate, and we want to kind of realize the vision that's in the T-top, both on the land use side and the transit side, as well as the highway side.
Very good. Commissioner Nielsen, did you have a comment?
No, I think you've done a good job. I'm familiar with the study, and so it's been a long time coming. I think we're kind of behind the eight ball. I appreciate your comment. I already knew that landowners were involved, that transit-oriented development takes partnership, that people are willing to make an investment if they see a public investment. If we expect them to make the investment first, that's not fair. They have to see some solidarity amongst the public agencies that this investment in the transit-oriented development side is going to happen hand in glove, so that they can then invest in the higher value, because the return, as your study showed, and a lot of studies show, this kind of investment has a very high return to the taxpayer, much higher return, in fact, than just a strip mall on a road. So I just really appreciate this. I think there's been some good progress on this.
We appreciate you coming in today. We know there's more to come. We want to
Yeah.
stay engaged in the process and be informed as you go, and we look forward to having you come back with some of those alternatives. So, as Commissioner Arnold stated, so that we can best know how we would participate and help with the process.
Perfect.
So,
Appreciate it.
we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
You very much.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Next, we have Mr. David Wallace to give us an update on the Collister Neighborhood.
So much Collister to discuss. Thank you. Right. Good morning, President May and Commissioners. I've been asked to discuss Collister Road, not knowing exactly what we want to talk about. First, let me
Just
mention.
just a general update on where we are.
Fair enough. We're very proud of the intersection that we just completed, and there will be some interface, as you said, with the VRT on that as well, as we have fulfilled that requirement of the TQOP today. So, two segments of Collister Road, and I have two slides here, just for the heck of it. I think Commissioner Baker has a copy of these. Anyway, so just for completeness, I first listed one just between State Street and Hill Road. We have a continuing interest from the neighborhood to put sidewalks in here. Those who preceded me will know, those folks that have been in the district longer than I have will recognize that there was an abortive attempt to put sidewalks on the Collister, on that part of Collister Road once upon a time, and that didn't work out so well for us. So we stopped that at commission direction at the time, and we are now going to re-engage. In this year's budget, we have some money apportioned for us to re-engage the public there and see what they're interested in putting sidewalks in. I understand this is a top concern for the neighborhood in this week. So, unless you have anything else on that segment of Collister?
Madam President?
Commissioner Baker?
Yes, I think it's important to point out that I think there's a real split in the neighborhood. And when you say the neighborhood wants this, I I think it's different. There's the neighborhood association, which may or may not represent the people who actually live on Collister, and then there are people who don't live on Collister, who feed into Collister, who have a different opinion than those who live on Collister. So I hope going forward, you just don't engage with the neighborhood association per se, but that you actually do major outreach to the people who actually live on Collister, have the wells on Collister that will be affected, and you know, all of that, because that's what brought this whole thing to a stop way back when.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Baker, and that's strictly our intent to do going forward, so we're going to be very mindful of that, but thank you.
Absolutely true. We do intend a robust public involvement for that. Thank you,
Can
Commissioner
I
Baker.
just add, I think we have a good model with
Hanson.
Kootenai, because I think the biggest concerns people have is that if we just put sidewalks on a standard, you know, setback, we're gonna get speeding, and then Kootenai provides us examples of where we've done an analysis of bulb outs and chicanes, and yeah, we get rid of some parking, we preserve the tree canopy so that you ensure that people drive down that road at opposed to the speed of 25, and that we don't just chop down all the trees and put the sidewalks as a straight line back away from the curb, and then whether the parking is used or not. So it's a long process to engage in with the neighborhood and the property owners, but I think a design can come up, and we've done it on Kootenai, but it's a lift, and it was a superb job, an award-winning job on the part of our staff to come up with that, which is not what I think the neighbors saw back in whenever it was before my time. So I'd like to see Collister be designed to the target speed with a lot of traffic calming, with a lot of those amenities. And yeah, it might cost a little more, it might take a little longer, but we'll do it right.
But it's effective.
Exactly,
It's
it's
worth
a straight
doing.
road.
Absolutely.
As soon as we push the sidewalks back, and build it like we have done on way too many collectors, we're gonna have speeding and probably,
And that is an exemplary model that we came up with on Kootenai with robust outreach, so that's a good suggestion.
That's
Thank
the
you.
model we should follow. I'll be looking for those.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Arnold?
I was here when we had sidewalks proposed on Collister before, and we were ready to pull the trigger and put them in, and the folks there said, no, this is not what we want. So the project stopped based on public input and what the public wanted out there. There were a lot of questions raised during that time by property owners about their irrigation facilities, their wells. Have we identified solutions for those concerns, or is there kind of nothing has happened in between? Because I don't want to get in a situation where we're spending a lot of money to do something and then not do it. So we need to figure out, okay, what were the impediments before, and how are we solving those to best suit what the neighborhood wants and needs?
Those lessons learned.
President May, Commissioner Arnold, couldn't agree more. We have, since that time, developed business practices were a little different than they were at the time, I understand. I wasn't here either. And I can assure you that we are going to be pursuing just the way you suggest. And to answer your question about that, yes, basically nothing has happened in the intervening time. So, which is why we want to start the exploration of this very important effort when we can.
Very good.
But we will listen to the public input very carefully. Going to page 2, just for argument's sake, Collister Road north of Hill Road, and more specifically north of Quail Ridge Drive. We had a project to repave this concrete road in 20. It's been pushed back to FY22. It's a federal project, and we are now intent on setting sidewalks all the way along this in ADA compliance. This is tricky.
Challenged.
It will be. That's exactly right. So we are starting the design effort anew. We're going to be putting out an RFI where we'll be selecting a consultant to sort their way through this. There will be design difficulties because the steepness of driveways, and steepness of the road for that matter.
Yeah.
And so now it includes both the road and the sidewalks. President May, I know that you and the director were involved in a conversation about speed control in there, and I've chatted with traffic this morning about this. I've seen several of the emails. The bottom line on this is they had requested, and again, it's the HOAC listed there as Briar Hill 2 and 3, whatever that means. So they had asked for speed control. It turns out traffic investigated it and found out that in fact most people on this road are within 5 miles per hour of the posted 25 mile per hour speed limit. So
I think part of that discussion was, I believe that's a trailhead down at
just
the end.
on the other side of that, yeah, just
and
beyond the page. Yep.
So they were going to look at doing a traffic study during the warmer weather.
Right.
The traffic tends to
Exactly.
uptick.
So comes down to we do plan a project here. We're in contact with the HOA, the two folks that I know were involved in the conversation to begin with, and I think that they're pleased that we keep in touch with them. Are there questions on this?
Remind me, Collister doesn't connect
Commissioner
other
Hanson?
than the trailhead.
No.
So for all intents and purposes, this is a cul-de-sac. It's not part of a network.
No.
No.
Right.
So it basically serves as the trailhead and the residents who live on that street only.
That's correct.
So I think in
Madam President?
terms of priorities,
Ms. Witzik?
that would be a concern to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Baker?
Yes, Dave, it's currently a concrete road?
That is correct.
Is that what you said?
Yes, it is.
So is it deteriorating? Because generally concrete is supposed to last a lot longer than asphalt.
Yes. Short answer is yes, it needs to be rebuilt. And this, you may recall, has got a center drain in the middle of the road too.
Yeah.
So it,
Well, Ridge isn't really that old. I mean, it's not like the roads on the bench or west bench. So is it just poorly constructed to begin with?
I can't reflect on that, but my guess would be that it's not gonna meet its design criteria.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker.
Commissioner
Commissioner Hanson?
It'd be nice to know whether this would be appropriate for the extraordinary impact fees.
Okay. Find out.
Fine.
We are going to, this is, as I mentioned, a federal project, and so it'll be federal funding for this going forward.
And I think Brooke Green had indicated that she was aware of some funding sources that she was gonna perhaps pursue and bring to our attention as well. So, Commissioner Goldberg, did you have a statement? Commissioner Arnold?
So these are two very different, projects. Where are these projects on Boise's priority list? You know, they provide that to us
So,
usually annually. Where are these two different projects on the Boise City priority list?
President May, Commissioner Arnold, to be perfectly complete on this, the Collister Road south of Hill Road is not actually a project right now. So this is an exploratory public involvement that we're engaging in from our planning side. It's in our planning budget for the year FY21, so that we can evaluate what public interest is, if any, in putting sidewalks along there. And I understand.
So we need to include Boise City in that conversation.
Absolutely.
To see where they are on it as well.
That's correct, and I should have been more specific about that. I don't know the exact number. I do know that it's a high priority, or it has been a high interest item on several inputs, including Boise City's over the years. And on the other one, I don't know.
Okay.
It was an approved project, and we'll find out.
It's not. We appreciate the update. Any further questions? Commissioner Baker, do you have any additional thoughts?
No, thank you.
Okay. With that, thank you very much, Mr. Wallace. We appreciate it.
Do you have a minute?
That's right. Lots of good information.
Folks wishing us a beer includes.
There's one right up.
Not good.
Just a question, Madam President, there was a couple people who asked about, and I'll give them a copy of our conversation on Collister and State Street, who wanted to listen in.
Okay.
And I told them I thought we were gonna meet out there, but we're not. Can we meet out there, so that people who want to listen to, the discussion on issues that affect them, without having to come in and sit in? Can we have our work sessions out there?
For our pre-commission?
For all of our work sessions, so,
I know we have a few that we're going to be having out there, but, we
it
can
just
certainly
makes
have
it
that
that much
discussion.
harder, yeah, so now I just have to tell them what's going on, and when they could have just tuned in and listened.
Well, we'll have that discussion, and, I'd like to get a little bit of historical data as to why we made the decision to not do that, so. And then we'll have that discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And with that, we will go ahead and call our pre-commission to order, and, we'll start with any general housekeeping items, which that was certainly one there, Mr. Hanson, so we've noted that. Any other items? Any concerns about the, agenda? We don't have anything on our regular agenda today, just a couple items on our consent agenda. No concerns? Okay. Hearing none. Director Wong?
Thank you.
Over to you.
So, you'll say good morning. Commissioners, for the last couple weeks, we've been working an issue with the that has arisen to all of our attentions, that in some of our recent construction areas and roadways, there seems to be a slight failure of some of the asphalt that has been used by a few of our contractors. We did an in-depth review that's in front of you on what we've seen on, again, some of the proposals. We have been meeting regularly with the AGC in collaboration to, from a group perspective, work through this. We have. We believe we found the rationale why, and bottom line, we have directed that the AGC we are do a couple modifications to their oil mixtures at source, and that we are now increasing the technical oversight, technical evaluation of those oils and asphalt cores as we move forward. Again, this was in partnership with the AGC. I've already briefed their leadership. They are agreed to the, it was nice that they agreed, but I mean, they agreed to the perspective on what we're going to do next, and this is, in my opinion, is a success story now that the two agencies, instead of throwing spears at each other, we sat down and walked through what we saw was an issue, what the AGC agreed was an issue, and that we have collaboratively come up with the methodology moving forward on inspection and specification on ensuring a consistency of those requirements that all of the AGC contractors, all contractors, are following. This at this point appears to be a no-cost solution, and such. We will bear the majority of the analysis. We have the technical team here to do that. We've been using labs on the East Coast and the West Coast just to ensure that when we believed we saw the issues involved with the type of mix that some of our contractors were using, it was verified, and like I said today, the AGC at their meeting is getting their presentation as to here are the rules of the road for the County Highway District, and we will be sharing this with the ITD here, so that they can, whatever they wish to do, that's fine. But anyway, I want to bring that to your attention. It's something we've been working on for about a month.
Madam
Yes.
President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
is this something related to super pave?
No. This had to do with the types of chemicals that were being added and the quantity of chemicals that were being added at the beginning of the oil mixture process. There are some contractors that don't have the specific tools nor the technical expertise, I'll call it, to assure that everything is where it needs to be. We're helping with that.
That's what we were worried about with super pave.
Right.
At least that was why I was
Right.
figuring.
Now, this is a first step. We're all in agreement that this should be the answer. If it isn't, then we'll take additional steps when it comes to super pave and the rat mix that we have going into different things right now. But I just want to let you know that again, we have been working this with the AGC now for about a month. Jessica and her team in the lab have been instrumental in this, and I will let you know that it's amazing the credibility that our lab team has, because when they speak, the entire AGC just stops. They are very supportive of Jessica and her team's analysis when it comes out to ensuring we have the best roads across the board. Now, these things I showed you, they're limited. They're just small areas of the district, and I believe, well, I'm confident we've solved that.
Chip seal gonna take care of some?
Not these. These were issues with. We have had some redone, but these were issues with again the chemical composition that would not allow the asphalt to remain as rigid and cracking, lava flow, pushing,
rippling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, if you've ever been to Honolulu and you went up the mountains, there's a lava flow right there.
I know that's not good.
No, that absolutely not good. So, again, I wanted to let you know that this was, as opposed to the Ada County Highway District just throwing spears, we took a more collaborative approach with the contractors and asked them to help us, even though we already knew we believed we knew what the answer was, to help us solve this issue, and I'm pretty confident we have.
Very good.
So we'll see how that moves.
It pays off, I think, big dividends when you work together. So I applaud you for spearheading that.
So,
Commissioner
have
Arnold?
we changed our specs?
Yes.
And tightened them
Yes.
and added detail
Yes.
to prevent this
Yes.
issue? Okay.
Last comment.
I have a
I
question.
appreciate all this instruction and talk, and I am just flabbergasted I actually understood all of it. But that's because of the two classes I took last fall.
Yeah.
And they are registering for the same classes today, if anybody's interested.
We're gonna get you a hard hat yet.
He's working on it.
So,
Very good. Commissioner Hanson?
So we'll be beefing up our inspections, right?
Yes.
And we will be, with respect to those things we identify, like the descriptions in these, the contractors have agreed to repair them at their cost.
Yes.
So we'll bear the cost of additional expense of evaluation, they'll bear the actual cost
Yes.
of repairs.
Yes.
And then is there a limit to that? Because obviously, as spring thaw happens, there'll be probably more things surface, or are we just
That's why we start
going
this
back?
now.
Yeah, are we just going back and, I mean.
Well, basically, yes to both.
Okay, so there is a limit to the number of, we could come up probably with thousands of,
Yeah,
potentially thousands of projects.
Right,
Little patches all over the place.
Again, based on our evaluation, we are confident with the specific contractors who were involved with this. We are confident on the specific locations.
Okay.
And so we've done a lot of homework on this issue, because again, I'm not gonna throw a spear.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to until we have the facts.
So people just want it fixed. I noticed several of these have been in Intellisys too.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, again, I just think it's a tremendous example of working as a team, moving forward with partners to solve an issue. Again, time will tell, and if we have to take additionally more steps, then you'll hear about it from the ATC. When it's all said.
Ready to go.
The next issue, though, we're working collaboratively with the AGC on, and I briefed this to you last week. Utilities. Utilities continue to be a challenge for not only us, but ITD, and of course all the contractors who are involved. And as you all know better than anybody else, when we lay those contracts and the bids are accepted and you award them, that contractor is now responsible from start to finish, regardless of what goes on in the middle. Now, we have great processes that when, you know, common sense, active, whatever you want to call it, come up, we do work with contractors to make them whole or to address the issue. That being said, one of the things that continues to be out in the weeds is this issue of utilities not showing up. Not Idaho Power.
I thought we fixed that with that, that was 2 years ago.
As you recall, Steve and I did take a little bit of a beating, but we won from Idaho Power. Never mess with a group with the name Power in their name. There's always ramifications. There are certain other utilities that have not been as responsive, have continued to fail in meeting their obligations, because, as you know, one of the legislative changes that we enacted years ago, when all government agencies were accused by utilities of not giving them enough time to prep their stuff. Well, we helped with that legislation, and now we notify the utilities 5 years out, and we give them the time 5 years out. They still can't make it. So what happens, commissioners, is that with the utilities not moving their stuff or working their stuff, that stops the contractor, and that cost to the contractor continues to go on. The public continues to be frustrated. You've seen the signs out there: road closed, road open. We're waiting for utilities. There is an issue there.
Maybe we should put that on the signs.
Well,
this project is being held up by X utility not doing their job when they're supposed to.
With a phone number.
Because we get telesis from people saying, there's nothing going on out here. Why is the road closed?
Well, the general counsel will not allow me to do that. But my point, though, is that this week I met with the leadership of the AGC, and I briefed them similar to what I shared with you last week, what we were intending to do, and I've asked them to partner with us on addressing the legislature. Because doing a little bit of homework, I understand that years ago there was teeth in the legislative language that when a utility did not meet its obligation, then there was substantial financial penalties that were dealt out through state legislation. I understand that after that first event, I think it was in 2001, 2002, 2003, then utilities got the law changed, where that teeth came out of that bill. Again, this is just I don't have all the facts on this, but discussion we had. We are going to attempt to partner. The AGC is speaking with their group as we speak now on whether or not that's an action that they are willing to go forward on. Their members are not happy because they get the brunt of the financial hit when it's all said and done. So
they get the financial, we get the blame.
Yeah. So let it be written, so let it be done. But my point, though, in this is that enough's enough. And so, as I shared with you last week, we are teeing up 3 projects that when we do the pre-construction briefing, that we will have a specific, and you're going to hear about it, area that you will work in during this time frame. If you fail to do this, financial liquidated damages will start. We'll see how this goes. We're hoping that again the AGC and later on this week, my discussions with ITD, that we will be able to form a group that says, well, not a group, just express our concerns collaboratively with the appropriate legislators to say, okay, you are looking for more transportation dollars. You are looking at all sorts of opportunities to save money. Yet at the same token, we are spending more because we don't have a certain group of utilities are never there when they're supposed to be, and sometimes they're months late, which stops what the construction team members can do. The other challenge is, of course, is water. As you know, a lot of our projects that the cities have asked us to do, that prep work has to be done when the irrigation canals are empty. And the legislation is very clear there. There isn't a specific date that the water can come through. It says, or when the water needs to come through. Generally it's in April, as you recall, but it can be in March. So we plan our projects a year to 2 to 3 out in advance to hit that window. And if the utilities, if that is part of that specific project, is not there as they have said and contracted to be there, then that project is not delayed a week, it's delayed a year. Because we've got to be in there when the water, and the irrigation districts are not going to hold up a project so the County Highway District can, or ITD can, that water's going to flow. And so I wanted to let you know this is a work in progress right now. I'll be circling back with the group later on this week, next week, and I'll let you know where this stands and such. I do believe there is appetite for this based on some preliminary discussions with certain legislators. That being said, the utilities, as all of you know, have a very powerful lobbyist operation. So we'll see how this plays out.
Who is it?
Huh?
Who is it?
Sullivan and Rieberger, and such. So and others. But my point is, we're going to give it a shot. You'll probably hear some complaints. And such. I want to give you a heads up on that.
Very good, thank you.
Property tax continues to be a discussion point at the legislature. As a matter of fact, when I walked in here, they were still talking about that. I don't know where this is going to go. I think that the initiative to freeze property tax for 1 year is gaining traction. I do know that we received calls from different agencies, and we're referring them to you. We are not answering any elected official or whatever comment on what do you guys think. So we refer them to you, and if they call you, that's great. If they don't, that's great. When it comes down to these different areas, I'll reiterate what I said last week. Whatever the legislature's decision is, we'll make it work. One way or another, we'll make it work.
I just want to point out, Commissioner May and I happen to sit in on the property tax analysis that is done at the request of the city of Boise, including a brilliant Dr. May, who's part of that research team. And I think it would behoove us to have that presentation to us, because it applies to all districts that are
Absolutely.
While the city is reliant 60-some% on property taxes, and we're reliant, I don't know, what is it, 50?
No.
Yeah, it's still.
We rely on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
$39 million worth.
It's an important part of, so I would love it, and I hope that doesn't conflict you out from listening in on
No.
that. But they did a really good job.
I'll pass that on.
Yeah. I know that a lot of people are watching that online as well.
Dr. May actually is on parole now?
Yeah, he's out.
Wow. Okay.
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
We have had, and I will speak to you individually on this based on privacy issues, but we have had several very difficult personnel actions earlier this week, which means like Sunday and Monday, and I have taken the appropriate corrective actions on those. Like I said, I'll speak to you individually about that. Next week, I want to remind you that we are going to have that open discussion out in the auditorium, the presentation on what the Commission's authorities are regarding land use, plat assigning authorities, all these different things which you can do out there so that it can be streamed, it can be recorded for those that you made that request, and we'll make sure that happens.
Absolutely.
I have for you today, and.
Can we, have some perhaps approved language to use to invite the planning and zoning commissions and city councils and others to attend?
That would be up to you, I'd have to check, I mean, it's an, it's
It's
an open meeting.
open. It's open.
Anybody can come.
Anybody can.
It'll be
Yeah.
streamed,
don't
we
need
can
to-
advertise that it'll be
Yeah.
streamed
Yeah.
so that they
Yeah.
can tune in.
Oh, yeah, plus we'll have a link so they can listen to it next 2 weeks from now as
Right.
well.
Sure.
Yeah, cause it'll be out there, it'll be recorded,
Mhm.
so they can go in.
Commissioner, we haven't had the specific language we put on the agenda yet, but I would use that language,
Yep.
as a, cause our general counsels, they will call that, to make sure that.
All inclusive.
Right, but, that will be, a good presentation, and, like I said, other than that, everything else is going absolutely great, and we are very busy.
Yes, you are, we appreciate it. Any other questions for Director Wong?
Commissioners, you have 9.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have Valentine cookies.